What you need in a VPN is speed when it comes to streaming videos. Our sponsor, Private Internet Access, is the only VPN fully optimized for lightning-fast streaming and downloading of 4K video content with servers in all 50 states and 91 countries, so you can access websites not normally available in your region or watch content on platforms like Netflix, Hulu, etc., not normally available in your country. Unlike many VPNs, Private Internet Access supports peer-to-peer file sharing and never logs user activity. My audience gets 83% off, which is just $203 a month and 4 extra months for free at piavpn.com/DavidP. The link is in the description. If you want better sleep, check out Pod 5 from our sponsor, 8 Sleep. It is a smart system that fits over any existing mattress, and it turns your bed into a fully adaptive sleep environment. The Pod 5 uses AI to adjust temperature, elevation, and sound in real time. Each side of the bed can cool or heat independently, and the new Pod blanket extends the comfort from head to toe. It can even detect snoring and gently raise your head to help. This has transformed my nights because I'm a hot sleeper. The Pod 5 keeps me cool, so I wake up feeling more rested. Go to 8sleep.com/Pakman and use the code Pakman for $350 off your very own Pod 5 Ultra. Welcome, everybody. It is definitely the only time I can remember where doing this sort of work has felt like this. And I have had a lot of conversations with creators over the weekend, having more of those conversations today. And there are a lot of really important things, I think, to talk about in the wake of this Charlie Kirk murder. And one of the things I want to start with is this concept of condemnation. Anyone who knows me, you all know, I've already condemned Charlie Kirk's murder. There's no except for, but, or anything. We can talk about his political views. We can talk about whether we feel empathy for him, but I have condemned the murder, and everyone I know on the left has done the same. Every serious person on the left has done the same. MAGA insists that the left is cheering this on. And that's just not true, except in the most random anecdotal corners of the internet. The left has denounced this. Elon Musk, for example, retweeted some account with close to 0 followers saying something horrible. But the reality is that every notable left-wing voice, every major Democratic figure, elected officials at the state, local, federal level, every mainstream commentator, everyone has condemned what took place. Now, there are some people who have clarified. I don't feel empathy for Charlie Kirk personally because I found his political views vile, because of the damage that he caused, the disinformation, the bigotry, fine. But even those people have condemned the violence, and that is a really important distinction. You don't have to suddenly feel empathy for Charlie Kirk as a person to say unequivocally, with no mitigation, ifs, ands, or buts whatsoever, this kind of violence is wrong, period. And that is where there is now a really important contrast that becomes very stark. When the target is on the left, the right doesn't just fail to show empathy, which now they're angry about, even though Charlie Kirk himself said, empathy's not a great thing. The right not only lacks empathy when the targets are on the left, they mock, they laugh, and sometimes they even cheer. Think back to when Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi, was brutally attacked with a hammer in their home. And remember, of course, that they were looking for Nancy Pelosi. Donald Trump Jr. made fun of it. It was widely ridiculed. It was dismissed as not something serious and important to condemn. More recently, when the Minnesota House Speaker, Melissa Hortman, was murdered, a sitting Republican senator and a lot of MAGA commentators joked about it. When Joe Biden announced he had cancer, There were a lot of influencers who mocked him for it, or who didn't even believe it, or thought it was part of some conspiracy theory. And that's not even the whole list. Like, I could just do an hour with examples. But the point here is they've laughed about all of it. They laughed, I mean, this is thinking back a ways now, but they laughed about Gabby Giffords when the Congresswoman Gabby Giffords was shot. They turned Hillary Clinton collapsing from pneumonia into a campaign meme. And they mocked John Fetterman's stroke, and they laughed at his debate performance when he was still recovering from it. And they jeered and cheered when Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. And so over and over again, there's been this reflex of cruelty as entertainment, people who have suffered as the kind of punchline to jokes. And this is not new. This is a long-standing pattern. And yet it's been the right that has claimed that the left celebrates when bad things happen to right-wingers. Whether it was Rush Limbaugh's illness, Trump testing positive for COVID, any number of right-wing figures facing health issues, except it's not true. The reality is that mainstream Democrats and progressive commentators and all of us, we condemned those celebrations. We saw those and said, I hope they recover quickly. I mean, go fact check me on it. Go back to my coverage when Donald Trump had COVID and was brought by helicopter to Walter Reed. You'll find that there was nothing gleeful or joyful about it whatsoever, even when these are our political opponents. And I know it's such a low bar, but this is sort of where we are. And it is the right that has consistently failed this empathy test, not the left. And now they have the audacity to say, where's the empathy? Where's the empathy for Charlie Kirk here? And so that's the real culture that we have to talk about. On the right, the cruelty is a feature. It's not a bug. And when they see violence, suffering, illness, even death, it's all fair game, as long as the victim isn't one of their own. This is not the fringe that is doing it. When Elon Musk retweets someone with 0 followers saying something about how they're glad Charlie Kirk was killed or whatever, that is the fringe. When it's Republican senators and governors and presidential candidates and Trump himself over and over and over, you realize that much like all of the other ideas and policies and principles that they abandon when they're inconvenient, the cruelty is the entire point. And so now, when someone like Charlie Kirk is murdered, we have roundly condemned it. I have made clear, if you want to end gun violence, there can't be any instances of gun violence that you say you are even tacitly okay with. Just not a single one. We've all been extraordinarily clear. They want to act like they've rediscovered morality and like we are cheering something that we are not cheering about. Suddenly they go, see, look, this is what the left is like. But the truth is actually the opposite. We have consistently condemned it. They have turned violence into a punchline. Now, I know that when you look around online, it's actually difficult to keep up with every single element of this. And oh, who was this person and what did they say? Did they actually say it or did they not? So I think in a situation like this, first of all, I hate to say this, getting offline is probably a good idea. I mean, I have stopped even looking at Twitter. No matter what I say on Twitter, I glance at the comments. It's a complete disgusting cesspool. It becomes, me being Jewish becomes a focus, as if that has anything to do with any of this. I mean, it's a mess. So I do encourage people to get offline. But focus on what you can control, which is that I know you aren't cheering this. I know you are condemning this. And all we can do is repeat time and time again. They have cheered many times for this sort of stuff. We aren't cheering. We are disgusted and sickened by this. All right, let's talk about the motive. What was the motive of Charlie Kirk's shooter? There are widespread speculations now, endless speculations, in fact. But the most important thing about the motive is that whatever the motive was, being raised in this wildly pro-gun, totally MAGA family didn't prevent the shooter from ending up a shooter. And that is so critical to understand. There is rampant speculation. The shooter is trans. That was the motivation. The shooter is not trans. The shooter has a trans partner. And that was the motivation. We're going to follow up on that in a moment. But the point here is, clearly the shooter hated Charlie Kirk. That we know. That we can say for sure. But in terms of the theories that are being spouted here, they are wild and completely without evidence. One, of course, is based on the idea that the shooter is a groyper. Now, if a groyper isn't a term you've heard before, groypers are like more aligned with somebody like Nick Fuentes. They're clearly on the right, but they're sort of the belief that Trump and Kirk are in some sense traitors to the right wing. You could say they are even to the right of Trump and Kirk. We don't know that that is the case at all. And so I think we should be careful about saying that that's what's going on. Another hypothesis has been, well, it's mental illness. We always hear that. And to some degree, I would argue, anybody who's willing to carry out such an attack on some level is mentally ill, but that can often be a distraction. The battle that is happening in the propaganda space and on social media is that those on the left want to argue that this was a right-wing shooting. Those on the right want to argue that this was a left-wing shooting. They want to categorize it. They want to be able to check the box under the category that is most convenient to them. But every single one of these analyses that I've heard, and actually even calling it an analysis is a little bit generous, something that's been missing from this is that Trump and MAGA and Republicans in their various forms have been telling us for years that certain traits are good and godly, and they are the best environment for a kid to be brought up in. They tell us if you grow up in a Christian household, that's the best thing for kids. It's the best. But in this case, growing up in this Christian household, religious family, did not inoculate Tyler Robinson from becoming a shooter and going out and murdering someone. They tell us that growing up around guns protects people. It's better for the people that have the guns. It's better for other people in society. Growing up around guns is a good thing. And in this case, growing up in a gun nut family led to Robinson knowing how to use a rifle to kill someone from 200 feet away. And so certainly in terms of the specifics, and even just in terms of the environment, the gun culture didn't keep society safer. And in fact, had he not grown up in such a family, he probably wouldn't have had the skill to hit Charlie Kirk from 200 feet away or whatever distance it was. And you can keep going with this. They tell us that growing up in a two-parent household prevents radicalization and it keeps kids out of trouble. And the problem is single parents. Yet Tyler Robinson grew up in the much lauded two-parent household. It wasn't two dads or two moms, which they tell us is worse. It was a mom and a dad. And just like that, we saw that that didn't prevent him from becoming a shooter either. And so oftentimes the right loves to pigeonhole the problem of gun violence as an issue of urban young men. That's code for black usually. When they say urban men, they're talking about black men. But Tyler Robinson is just a rural white guy, or maybe it's suburban white guy. His father was in law enforcement. We're told there is no better environment for a kid to grow up in than with a family in law enforcement. It keeps you on the straight and narrow and prevents you from becoming a criminal. Well, it didn't work. Despite growing up the son of a cop, he ended up an alleged killer. And so that's the real hypocrisy here. Every so-called safeguard that the right insists is going to keep kids on the right path, Christian upbringing, two parents, law enforcement in the family, respect for guns, all of that stuff was present in Tyler Robinson's life, and none of it mattered. For MAGA, Tyler Robinson's upbringing was really like their Camelot. Reddest state in the country, grandma says everyone was MAGA, and so if these are the values that Republicans claim are the antidote to violence, to a life of crime, how do they explain that their model household produced the shooter? Trump even acknowledged this. How could this have happened given the right-wing upbringing? Check this out.
He's become radicalized. So many things have been learned about him so quickly. He's become totally radicalized. And crazy, and it must have been traumatic because the parents are conservative people, supposed to be very nice people, living in Utah, and the father turns in the son. Boy, that's a tough deal. I actually asked somebody in the FBI, how often does that happen where, knowing even the guilt, that a father will turn in or parents will turn in the son? And he said, almost never.
So this really exposes what's been true all along. These talking points aren't really solutions. These are shields to avoid addressing the real issue. The only variable that shows up every single time is access to guns. The motives may differ, could be a personal grievance, could be ideology, could be mental health, but the common denominator is that someone angry had the tools and the training to kill somebody else. And if Robinson hadn't grown up around firearms, it's unlikely he would have had the skill to hit someone from 200 feet away. And yet, instead of confronting reality, both sides rush into the mode of speculation. Can we call this a left-wing attack? Can we call it a right-wing attack? And the battle over the narrative is a distraction. The obsession with labels misses the deeper sickness here, which is that in America, if you have a grievance, you can turn it into violence because the weapons are there. And culturally, we talk about this when we talk about, in Switzerland, they have so many guns. Culturally, even if you don't believe it, even if many people don't believe it, the idea of guns as a way to solve interpersonal problems is too common. So it's not about, it's an urban issue. It's not about single parents. It's not about a godless household. This was a rural or suburban white kid from exactly the type of family that Republicans glorify. And still, he became a killer, allegedly. So the right is trying to spin this into a culture war sort of talking point situation. But the reality is that their perfect bubble in which the kid was raised isn't safe. So the better question isn't really what was his motive. It's why does this country make it so damn easy for any grievance, any ideology, any angry young man to become a shooter? And they never want to talk about that. Now, just one other note. There's the idea that college radicalized him. We're going to talk about that later. He did a semester online during COVID. And so by the way, not exactly at a liberal institution. So we're going to get back to the college thing. But the Camelot upbringing that every one of these MAGAs says this is the best possible thing, it ultimately produced a shooter. And if the argument is, the shooting came as a result of radicalization by the left, that certainly must have happened very recently. And 18, 19, 20 years of the right upbringing didn't even prevent that from happening. So either way, that's the most important takeaway. If you've ever been blocked from going to certain websites or watching your favorite shows on Netflix because they're not available in your country, check out our sponsor, Private Internet Access, which is a VPN fully optimized for streaming and downloading large video files. It'll hide your real IP address and reroute your internet traffic through a secure server in any of 91 countries or all 50 US states. And this lets you access region-restricted content on the web, as well as platforms like Netflix and Disney Plus and Amazon Prime, no matter where you are. I've been using Private Internet Access to get soccer games from Argentina not available in the US. I love it. It's super easy. You open the app, you choose a server, and you're in. Works on unlimited devices, so your whole household can stream freely. And it also supports lightning fast peer-to-peer file sharing, and they can prove they do not log your activity. Right now, Private Internet Access is giving my audience 83% off, which is just $203 a month and 4 extra months for free. Go to piavpn.com/DavidP. The link is in the description. If you're not sleeping well, everything suffers. Energy, mood, even your memory. And that is why I want to tell you about Pod 5 from our sponsor, 8 Sleep. It's a smart system that transforms any bed into a personalized, fully adaptive sleep environment. The Pod 5 cover goes right over your existing mattress and uses AI to regulate temperature, elevation, even sound throughout the night, adjusting to your sleep stages in real time. You get precision cooling or heating on each side of the bed from 55 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit, And now with the new pod blanket, the comfort extends across your entire body. This has been a game changer for me. I get hot at night, and the Pod 5 keeps me cool. No more waking up too hot, no more loud fan next to the bed. It even detects snoring and gently raises your head to stop the snoring automatically. You can add in white noise if you want, guided meditations. You get 30 days to try it at home and return it if you don't like it, but I'm confident you will love it. Go to 8sleep.com/Pakman and use code Pakman for $350 off your very own Pod 5 Ultra. The link is in the description. The David Pakman Show is, of course, primarily supported by our audience. I invite you to grab a membership at joinpakman.com. You get an extra bonus show every day, commercial-free audio and video streams of the show available hours before the show is made public, and a whole bunch of other great stuff. And you're directly supporting the show at a time when, by the way, as you'll hear a little bit later today, it is sorely needed. Joinpakman.com, and you can use the coupon code It Will End Soon, all one word, all lowercase, to save about 50% off of the cost of a membership. Let's talk about the indoctrination that comes from college, according to the right wing. Kari Lake, multi-time failed candidate, Kari Lake, MAGA suck-up, is blaming college for radicalizing Charlie Kirk's alleged shooter. The problem being, he didn't really go to college. He did one virtual semester during COVID, which is really difficult to imagine is going to become an extraordinary force of radicalization. Let's take a listen to what Kari Lake had to say.
We've got to stop this, folks. We can't let this go on. This violence has got to stop. It's got to stop. And I'm not going to say our side is perfect, but damn it, this is coming from the other side. How does a 22-year-old become so filled with hate? 5 years earlier, I was told he was a Trump supporter. And we sent our kids off to college and they brainwashed them. I am making a plea to mothers out there. Do not send your children into these indoctrination camps. Don't do it. Do not do it.
So the one semester he did virtually at the not very woke Utah State during COVID is meant to supposedly replace or supplant 18, 19 years of being raised in a hardcore MAGA family, religious, gun enthusiasts. As I said earlier in the show, a family that checked every box that MAGA says is the best environment for children to grow up in. We're supposed to believe, according to Kari Lake, that just one semester of remote college during COVID changed all of that. And also, even though that was years ago, it only now led to the shooter allegedly taking action. The problem, of course, is that it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense not only because Utah State is not some radical left-wing indoctrination factory. It's, you could argue, as mainstream as it gets, or even probably a more right-wing institution. But most importantly, I don't even really think Kari Lake believes this. I think if Kari Lake really believed it, she would keep her own kids out of college. And I have to imagine Kari Lake's own kids are going to go to college. And so she can stand on the stage and she's pleading with mothers, don't send your kids to school, they're going to be indoctrinated. But when the time comes, I am sure that Kari Lake is going to have no problem sending her kids off to higher education, because I don't even think she believes this. This isn't really a principle. This is a performance. And it's another example of MAGA leaders telling their followers, you need to make a sacrifice, but they're never going to make the sacrifice. We need to sacrifice economically. They tell us it's going to be a little painful in the short term because of the tariffs, but there's something good coming at the end of the rainbow. Just do it. But meanwhile, Trump's not suffering. His billionaire buddies aren't suffering. The centimillionaires, They're not suffering. You need to suffer. They don't. You need to sacrifice. They don't. And so now Kari Lake says, your children shouldn't go to college, but hers, I'm sure, are going to. So I do think that there's a bigger story here that's important to talk about. This is a perfect example of something that authoritarian movements do. Now, in a moment, we're going to talk about the clampdown on media, social media, independent media that's coming as a result of this tragic killing. And that's also something that authoritarians love to do. But authoritarians love to rewrite history to fit the narrative that they need. Now, you'll notice that I'll speak for myself. I said from the beginning, whatever the motive of this shooter, whatever the ideology, whatever indoctrinated him, I am unequivocally on the side of condemning this. No matter how despicable Charlie Kirk's views were, I am on the side that violence is not the answer and that gun violence is not going to be the way to end gun violence. Gun violence is not going to be the way to improve society. That's me. But for them, tell whatever story will help to push your goals. And so when the facts become inconvenient, they are bent or reshaped or replaced with whatever is convenient to them. Now, we've seen it. If you go back to January 6th, they insist it's a peaceful protest. We've seen it going back to November of 2020, where they insist Joe Biden didn't really win. It was Donald Trump who won. And so now we are seeing Kari Lake insisting college radicalized the shooter. The real story is that he grew up in an environment that Kari Lake believes is the perfect environment to grow up in. And if just one semester on his computer years ago is enough to undo 18, 19 years of the perfect idyllic upbringing in a pro-gun, MAGA religious family, then maybe that environment isn't so good at raising kids. But that's not a reality they want to talk about. And so this is why authoritarianism can thrive in so many different scenarios. When you make people believe a lie about the past, you control their understanding of the present. They come to believe things about today based on things they've been lied to about the past, and then that affects their choices for the future. It's a classic from authoritarianism. MAGA knows it. People like Stephen Miller know it. I don't know what Trump knows. He doesn't seem particularly bright when it comes to this stuff, but Kari Lake is doing it in real time. Now, one bonus clip here from Kari Lake's speech yesterday at the Kennedy Center in memoriam of Charlie Kirk. She says the parents did a good job of raising him, but then they sent him off to be brainwashed. And this only reinforces exactly what I'm telling you. Take a look.
At one moment, that 22-year-old who shot Charlie was a baby in his mother's arms. And by all accounts, those parents did a good job raising him until he was sent off to be brainwashed. We have lived through the most horrific brainwashing campaign in the history of mankind. And the very fact that we're all here means we have somehow survived it. We've survived it. But too many youngsters are not surviving it. And we got to stand up. Because some things are non-negotiable. Our children's minds and futures are non-negotiable.
So like I said earlier here and in the earlier segment, if this was a perfect upbringing and the parents did a good job for 18, 19 years, religion, guns, steeped in, white people and Jesus and all the stuff they say is great. A couple months on his computer doing university undid all of that. Either colleges have figured out the most potent and powerful and rapid way in history to indoctrinate people, or maybe more likely, this upbringing that they consider to be perfect isn't actually the perfect model that they claim it to be. That's where I am on this issue. Donald Trump and MAGA have wasted no time after Charlie Kirk's killing, instead of waiting for the facts, they immediately pivoted to blaming the usual suspects. It's the liberal media, it's social media, it's TikTok, it's podcasts, and of course, as Kari Lake did, it's also universities. You can hear the talking points sort of forming in real time, and on Fox News, on right-wing radio, it's creeping into mainstream coverage. The problems are Reddit, TikTok, the platforms are the problem, they are saying. And the narrative is quickly becoming that this toxic online culture radicalized Tyler Robinson. Now, I will be the first to acknowledge, I've talked about it, I wrote about it in my book, I am the first to acknowledge it is true that online spaces can foster extremism. But the target isn't extremist propaganda here. When you hear them talk about the problems with the platforms, they're not saying, you go look for workout content. Next thing you know, you're on Jordan Peterson and the Nelk Boys and Andrew Taint and all of these other people. They are saying it's just the platforms that are the problem. And what do they mean by that? They mean that some of these platforms haven't bent to just Donald Trump and Stephen Miller telling them what they need to promote algorithmically and what not to. Here is a tweet, by the way, from Texas Governor Greg Abbott about the free speech clampdown that they are gloriously joyful about, where there is a picture of a young woman in handcuffs with the text, "This is what happened to the person who was mocking Charlie Kirk's assassination at Texas Tech." Now, I don't mock the deaths of people. I don't celebrate gun violence. I think this is all deplorable and disgusting. And even though I disagreed with Charlie Kirk about just about everything, disagreed with him about the Civil Rights Act, disagreed with him about black pilots, disagreed with him about Martin Luther King, about abortion, bodily autonomy, I disagreed with him about just about everything. I don't believe that the answer here is a clampdown on speech. And this is straight out of the authoritarian playbook. History is full of leaders who take a crisis, doesn't matter what the crisis is, any crisis, they twist it into an excuse to silence critics and to suppress speech. And, we could spend a whole show on examples. Erdogan did it in Turkey after a coup attempt. They said, security concerns mean we have to wipe out opposition media. Viktor Orban in Hungary went after independent outlets, labeling them foreign influenced when they became inconvenient. We've seen, look at Putin, right? Shutting down alternatives to Twitter in Russia under the guise of keeping the nation stable. So what you are seeing right now is Donald Trump reaching for the same page in the manual. We've got a tragedy. We're going to use it to do a crackdown. And notice, by the way, how the media, legacy and corporate media, is mostly playing along. They may mean to, they may not. But there are even some independent and centrist outlets, non-political outlets, that have slipped into this very casually. They go, the things that are going on Reddit, the things that are going on TikTok. And meanwhile, you've got MAGA platforms like Truth Social and Rumble, and you've got right-wing extremist Telegram channels. These are fire hoses of violent rhetoric, conspiracy theories, openly insightful stuff. INCITE is what I'm talking about. And they get a pass. And so the hypocrisy really couldn't be more obvious. When it is their platforms, it's free speech. And in fact, the right loves to say this is a free speech platform, which I find one of the sort of dumbest oxymorons out there. When it's anyone else's platform, or it's a neutral platform, or it's a non-political platform, it's dangerous indoctrination and we've got to shut it down. So if this succeeds, and later we're going to get into how this might affect us, and specifically progressive independent media, if they succeed, if they use this to try to shut down Reddit or limit it, or say, hey, we really got to ban TikTok now, or whatever, things are only going to get worse. YouTube and podcasts, independent media across the board are going to suffer. And that's only going to lead to more radicalization by not providing alternatives to that manosphere ecosystem that algorithmically gets people sucked into a lot of this stuff. So understand that when they talk about free speech, their version of free speech is Fox News, Newsmax, and Truth Social are the only platforms left. Twitter becomes a right-wing farce, which it already has. Everybody else is either silenced or forced underground, where the platforms won't have their content, and they've got to figure out how to get their message out using, I guess, their own platforms, which they have to create. So this is much bigger than TikTok or Reddit. This is about the precedent of tragedy weaponized into excuses to suppress speech and to do authoritarian crackdowns. And so when they say we've got to go against the extremism, Trump said yesterday, the extremism is only on the left. And so by definition, when they go for the extremism, they're coming for the left. This is potentially the perfect moment to do it. It's clear they're setting their sights on progressive independent media, which we'll talk about after the break. There was a time when public education meant learning math, science, history, but now we are seeing Bible verses in biology class. We're seeing 10 commandments on the wall, religious chaplains taking the place of trained counselors, and it's all funded by taxpayer money through voucher programs that are sending public dollars to private religious schools. This is part of a broader effort to inject religion into public education. I'm against that. And it often is coming at the expense of real academic standards and the well-being of the students. Now, our sponsor, the Freedom From Religion Foundation, is fighting back. FFRF defends constitutional principles, takes legal action when schools cross the line, and protects students from religious coercion in public classrooms. If you believe in facts, in protecting education, in keeping religion out of public schools, I can tell you this is an organization very much worth supporting. To get involved, go to ffrf.org/school or text David to 511-511. Message and data rates may apply. The link is in the description. For the first time that I can remember in all of my years doing this, we have a president of the United States signaling that he is coming for us. Donald Trump spoke just hours ago and said a number of outrageous and disgusting things. But one of the things that Donald Trump revealed is that the left is already under investigation. That those who, I guess, said things that Trump wrongly believes may have radicalized Charlie Kirk's alleged shooter were already under investigation. Now, does this include me personally? I have no idea. But it is clear where they are setting their sights and targets. Take a look at this.
We'll see. We'll be announcing. They're already under investigation. They're already under major investigation. A lot of the people that you would traditionally say are on the left. Already under investigation.
This is a problem not only because it's personally terrifying. This is a problem not only because it is a dangerous and disgusting authoritarian crackdown, if indeed it is what he is going to do. This is a problem because it is based, as is often the case with these folks, in misunderstandings or just straight up lies about the origins of this radicalization. And we need only look at another statement Donald Trump made during the same sort of press event to understand that, where Trump says the only problem here is the left. Take a listen to this.
Organizations on the left will anticipate investigating and talk about these last week.
Well, the problem is on the left. If you look at the problem is on the left. It's not on the right, like some people like to say on the right. The problem we have is on the left. And when you look at the agitators, you look at the scum that speaks so badly of our country, the American flag burnings all over the place, that's the left, that's not the right.
I do not believe that any political side is perfect. I would never go out there and suggest that there is no radicalization or extremism on the left, because that's not true. There is some. But we have to be honest about proportion, and we have to be honest about scale. And you can look at any report, CSIS, you can look at Anti-Defamation League, you can look at Pew, you can look at any of them. And overwhelmingly, political violence in the United States comes from the right. To the extent that it comes from the left, I also denounce it. And we should do everything we can to stop it. I'm nonpartisan in that. I don't want any political violence. If I'm against violence, I can't also say, but some of it is okay, as long as it's perpetrated by the right side. Of course not. I would be a hypocrite. But being a hypocrite still sort of matters on the left. For the right, it doesn't make any difference whatsoever. Any principle, any idea is immediately abandoned when politically inconvenient or applied in a way that they don't like. They just go, the problem is only on the left here. So think about the combination of this. Donald Trump is saying the left is under investigation. We're looking at the platforms, we're looking at the media outlets, we're looking at all of it. And by the way, this is only a problem on the left. Now you look at a bunch of different academic studies, and maybe I'll follow up on this later this week when I'm back in the studio and it's easier to do it. A number of studies have shown that when you start with ostensibly nonpartisan, nonpolitical content on social media, the natural pipeline is to right-wing content. If you go on YouTube or TikTok and you want information about real estate wholesaling, supplements, workout routines, self-help, I could go on. You are extremely unlikely to be routed into further and further left-wing content. You are very likely to end up following guys on steroids who teach you sales, who also say that unless you're religious, you're not going to succeed in sales. And by the way, they support Donald Trump. You're much more likely to end up fed content from the Jordan Petersons of the world and the Andrew Tates and these sorts of people. So it's not only that Trump is sort of wrong and that the problem isn't only on the left, it's mostly on the right, but don't take my word for it or Trump's, right? Fact check both of us. And this is the difference. I don't pretend to be the ultimate source of truth. My understanding of the data is that political violence in the US comes mostly from the right, and that the radicalization is mostly pushing to the right, whatever this anecdote says. But don't take my word for it, but don't take Trump's either. Go and find out for yourself. Okay, meanwhile, Donald Trump, during the same press event, unable to get away from the same failed notions about economics. I just include this only as a sort of, he still doesn't understand tariffs. Take a look.
Okay?
Have you
Go ahead.
How was the talk today?
Good. We had talks going on. Scott Bessent is there and some others. Jameson is here. And yeah, I think they're going fine.
When will you impose tariffs on China?
We're going to see, but we've hit them very hard in so many other ways. I don't know if you know. Do you know what they're paying right now? What are they paying right now? You know what China is paying right now in tariffs? Huh?
Not the exact dollar.
A lot.
Mr. President, have you been briefed on what happened in Venezuela with U.S.
Yeah, so reminder, China is paying 0 in tariffs. The tariffs are paid by American companies. They pass the cost on to you in the form of higher prices, and that's why prices are ticking up. But maybe even more disgusting and disturbing than all of this is how quickly Donald Trump has moved on from the killing of his supposed friend, Charlie Kirk. A cold-hearted Donald Trump, within just hours of finding out about the identity of the alleged shooter of Charlie Kirk, his friend, Trump moved on. And he said, what about my ballroom that is over there? Don't believe me? Take a look at this clip. Trump giving condolences for his loss. How are you holding up? Trump goes, pretty good. By the way, look over there. They are building my ballroom. Take a look.
My condolences on the loss of your friend, Charlie Kirk. Can I ask Kirk personally, how are you holding up over the last 3.5 years?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks. They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty. It'll be an absolutely magnificent structure. And I just see all the trucks. We just started, so it'll get done very nicely, and it'll be one of the best anywhere in the world, actually.
Thank you so much.
Donald Trump was asked a simple human question. How are you holding up after the murder of Charlie Kirk, your supposed friend, your ally? And Trump goes, very good. And by the way, look over there. We're building the ballroom. It's going to be beautiful. It's not condolences for the family. It's not outrage about the killing. It's not the slightest sign of grief. It's very good. look at my shiny new project. This is bizarre behavior. Now, if I am to be charitable, and I always try to be charitable, this could be a trauma or shock response from Donald Trump. It's so painful and it's so overwhelming, the grief that Trump is experiencing, that he almost dissociates and he moves on and he has to point to something else and go, I'm doing pretty well, even though he's not. And it's so difficult. He goes, look at my ballroom over there. I don't think that that's what this is. This tracks with how Trump always is. Everything is an opportunity to talk about himself. In the middle of a tragedy, his instinct is pivot away from the people and pivot towards spectacle. My big, beautiful ballroom and the branding and the legacy and the gold leaf and the gold trim. It's sort of the salesman in Trump. The fact that Charlie Kirk was gunned down doesn't even make him pause. It becomes background noise for Donald Trump's next pitch of what he wants to sell you. And this is kind of sad. I mean, it does, in a way, I feel sad for Trump that he's so disconnected from feeling in this way. This is a pattern we've pointed out before. Trump doesn't really have friends in the normal sense of the word. He has allies who he's friendly with. He has employees. He has clingers and hangers on, but he doesn't really seem to have these mutual emotional bonds that make loss palpable and tangible in any way. And this is why we saw the same thing after Puerto Rico, after COVID deaths, after soldiers killed in action. If the suffering doesn't personally touch Trump, it's almost like it doesn't exist or it becomes a prop for self-promotion. Charlie Kirk gave his career and ultimately gave his life to boosting Trump and boosting MAGA. And in the end, Trump can't even fake 15 seconds of real compassion. So yeah, Trump seems emotionally hampered and limited for sure. Maybe this is a trauma response to some degree, but at the end of the day, it's the same thing we always see from Trump. And it is really, you want to talk about lack of empathy, a lack of feeling, it's right there in the Oval Office. Eric Trump has never really been known to be the smart one, and he seemed to issue even more threats on Fox News, showing up there yesterday, just after Charlie Kirk's death. And he says that they have awoken that sleeping enemy, which is yet another one of these very thinly veiled threats. Take a listen.
They were being taught revisionist history in the classrooms, and honestly, it all changed, and honestly, that it all has Charlie's DNA in it. So we're going to miss a great friend, but they have definitely awoken that sleeping enemy.
Eric, thank you. Condolences to you and friends.
Now, Eric can't just stop there. He takes Charlie Kirk's death and says, they've awoken a sleeping enemy. This is the MAGA script. Tragedy as proof of righteousness, victimhood as justification for escalation. By making themselves, the Trump family, the MAGA movement, the victims, they justify escalating, which is sadly something that a lot of authoritarians do. And you wouldn't necessarily have assumed that the killing of Charlie Kirk would become a catalyst for an even bigger escalation of authoritarianism. Maybe you would have assumed that, but that is ultimately what it has become. They rail against the snowflakes, they rail against victim culture, but they are addicted to it. They say this grievance culture on the left is bad. They are pushing the grievance culture because every single event, no matter how tragic, simply becomes an excuse to say we're the martyrs, we're the victims, we are under siege, and therefore retribution is justified. And my fear is that the MAGA people that rioted on January 6th are listening and that they are going to take action. And so when Eric Trump says they've awoken a sleeping enemy, these are threats, plain and simple. We have to think about them that way. This is the coded language that MAGA falls back on. Paint themselves as peaceful until supposedly someone pushes them too far, and now they have to take action. Now it's, listen, the left pushed it, now we've got to take action. And so when Trump does his, we don't want violence, but if you don't stop us, who knows what might happen? It's the exact same sort of thing. And so this is a message meant to intimidate. It's meant to suggest that MAGA's enemies should be ready for a backlash without Eric Trump ever having to spell out what it is. It's similar to Trump's rhetoric on January 6, 2021 that led to the riots. And Eric Trump is back to tell this sort of, too perfect to be true anecdote type to suggest that everyone supports this idea. And in fact, he has one of these stories. It's these, with tears in my eyes, they said, "Sir." Eric says that on the way to the studio, an older Jamaican man said to him in broken English how sorry he is about Charlie Kirk. Take a listen.
And it kind of rings true here. That's exactly what you did. It literally, as I was showing up to the studio, Maria, there was an older Jamaican man who came up to me in very broken English and said, "Mr. Trump, I'm very sorry about Charlie Kirk. He was an amazing Christian. I am Charlie Kirk," right?
Yeah, the guy was sobbing and he just said, "Sir, please, please do something about it." And then during the very same interview, Eric Trump back to these sorts of thinly veiled threats.
Everybody. I've had employees, Maria, call me and say, "My children, my 17-year-old daughter has been in her room crying. It's changed her immensely." I mean, this is transcending not only the youth generation, but also the older generations. This is a hit on our country. It's a hit on our movement. It's a hit on, Christianity. It's a hit on religion. It's a hit on freedom. It's emphasizes the dichotomy between, good and evil in this country. And they truly have awoken that sleeping giant, just not within the youth vote, but really transcending everybody who's in this nation. It's had such a profound effect on this nation. And seeing Erica on there, she was so unbelievably articulate, so unbelievably strong. This could have been the greatest mistake these people have ever made.
And Eric, you have a new memoir.
This is very serious. I wish that I could come to you and say, there's no real concern here about escalating violence. I wish that I could say that to you, but I'd be lying. And I don't know exactly where the violence might come from. I don't know who would be the target of the violence, but this is shaping up to be extraordinarily scary. And I know some creators that are taking pretty drastic measures as a result. We'll talk about that more later or maybe tomorrow. One of the best upgrades I've ever made to the meals I make at home is Wild Grain. Wild Grain lets me have high-quality baked goods ready at home whenever I want them. Wild Grain is the first bake-from-frozen subscription box for artisanal breads, pastries, and pastas. You can customize your box online. If you're gluten-free, they've got it. It all goes in your freezer. You put it right in the oven, 25 minutes or less. No need to thaw, no need to prep, no need to clean up. They've got some great limited time fall items, pumpkin cinnamon biscuits, my favorite, apple cider donuts. I grew up with these in New England. They've been a hit in my kitchen. The biscuits are buttery and flaky. The donuts are just a little crispy on the outside, warm, spiced center. Impressive stuff. You would never know it was baked from frozen. And also, Wild Grain's slow fermentation process makes their breads more nutrient-rich and flavorful. So maybe it's a cozy weekend breakfast or something to add to dinner. Wild Grain makes it easy. And for a limited time, you can get $30 off your first box, plus free croissants in every box when you subscribe at wildgrain.com/Pakman. The link is in the description. Fox News host Brian Kilmeade suggested simply killing homeless people. And why would that be something that a Fox News host suggests? Well, to some degree, we are seeing a great disinhibition. I'm going to explain that in a moment. Let's take a look at the clip of what he had to say.
Billions of dollars to mental health and the homeless population. A lot of them don't want to take the programs. A lot of them don't want to get the help that is necessary. You can't give them a choice. Either you take the resources that we're going to give you, or you decide that you're going to be locked up in jail. That's the way it has to be now.
Or involuntary lethal injection or something. Just kill them.
Yeah, Brian, why did it have to get to this point?
Right. I would say this. We're not voting for the right people. In North Carolina, wake up.
So Brian Kilmeade is floating involuntary lethal injection for people living on the street. His co-hosts barely flinch and they just keep going. Think about what that means. We've got a host of the most watched right-wing network saying that the solution to poverty and to mental illness is state-sanctioned murder. no outrage, no accountability other than a bad apology. And in a sense, this was so bad that Fox News even made him apologize. Take a look at the apology.
In the morning, we were discussing the murder of Irina Zaruska in Charlotte, North Carolina, and how to stop these kinds of attacks by homeless, mentally ill assailants, including institutionalizing or jailing such people so they cannot attack again. Now, during that discussion, I wrongly said they should get lethal injections. I apologize for that extremely callous remark. I'm obviously aware that not all mentally ill homeless people act as the perpetrator did in North Carolina, and that so many homeless people deserve our empathy and compassion.
Why is it that this is going on? There is a great disinhibition taking place here, and it comes from the top. The disinhibition when the President of the United States says, we're just going to federalize and militarize. Wow, I did not expect to struggle with that one. Militarize Washington, D.C. It's justified because Trump said it is. We're going to roll through the streets and oppress and suppress. So, of course, if you're a Fox News host, you go, let's go even further. We see this tragic instance of gun violence, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. By the way, there were 20 other shootings on that day. They got relatively little attention, but okay, we had a day with 21 shootings, might have been 25, might have been 30. And they, to a degree, now have said it's open season on liberals. And so, of course, Brian Kilmeade is disinhibited. And this, by the way, the specifics of lethal injection, this all has a very ugly history. States like North Carolina forcibly sterilized poor people into the 1970s. Hitler admired American race laws when he designed his system. And so we like to pretend that there's nothing American about Brian Kilmeade's rhetoric. And I would argue there shouldn't be anything considered American about that. But it unfortunately is sort of part of the ugly side of America's DNA. And Kilmeade still wants it to be part of it, I guess. Now, here's the other piece of this. This is kind of where our system will naturally drift when you commodify survival. Capitalism, in its most extreme forms, treats housing, healthcare, and food as products that you earn. And if you haven't earned them, you don't get them. Now, you might say, David, that sounds like socialist rhetoric. No, you all know I'm not a socialist. But if you look at social democracies, countries that are capitalist countries, but they are regulated, and they ensure that no one falls too low when it comes to standard of living. Social democracies, which are capitalist countries, again, I repeat it because people seem to forget, they say, we have a market economy. If you want to sell some kind of expensive basketball sneaker for $200, you can do it. But we are going to look at certain things, housing, healthcare, maybe even food, as things that just everybody deserves. We are a better society, and everyone has more dignity when everybody has a place to live. And if you can't afford a place to live, you don't get punished as if it's a personal failing. The logic of inject the homeless with lethal injection is that if you don't have a home, it's a personal failing and you deserve some kind of punishment. Now, I am, on a personal level, the whole I like working hard, I want to build something, I don't want help from others. On a personal level, I identify with that. But I also recognize that my circumstances, which I had no involvement in creating, allowed me to be in a position to do that. And so even if that resonates with me, I still believe in a strong social safety net. There are a lot of these people on the right who go, well, I was able to just figure out how to be successful and afford a home and food and healthcare and whatever. Therefore, anyone should be able to do it. And if they don't, it's their fault and the government should do nothing to help. Put aside for a moment that from a fiscal perspective, it's actually better just to pay for these things than to incur the costs of people not having homes and not having healthcare and not having food, which makes them desperate, which raises crime and causes social costs. Forget about that for a second. I don't know if they care about that. Why can't we consider that just because we were in a position to do something, others may not have been? Why can't we imagine that? Anyway, this is like social Darwinism dressed up as business casual. And if you follow this logic to the extreme, you get what Kilmeade said, which is like, hey, we found some unproductive people by our definition of productivity. Why don't we just eliminate them? So I started the show by saying the cruelty isn't a bug. It's not a bug, it's a feature. And it's also the business model. And I don't believe that Fox airs this sort of stuff by accident. This is how they keep people glued to the screen. And the more shocking, the better. The more dehumanizing, the better. Kilmeade was apparently forced to apologize. He's not going to be punished. He'll probably get a ratings bump. And in Trump's America, saying the unsayable isn't a career-ending scandal. It's sort of like a resume builder. Wow, Kilmeade's got some edgy stuff. We often see, and this is, we get back to retribution and violence leading to more violence. You often see over the last 150 years, dehumanization right before violence. And so if there are people willing to say this out loud, lethal injection for homeless people, imagine what they're willing to say or push for behind the scenes, and that's terrifying. This is a window into the authoritarian mindset. Everything is pushing them in this direction. And by the way, if you think we've forgotten about those files, we haven't. So guys, where are the Epstein files? Because while everybody's understandably focused on Charlie Kirk's assassination, Trump is killing people with a strike on a Venezuelan boat, we are all left to wonder, where are the Epstein files? And we're not going to forget. Now, I know that there are a lot of people posting to social media that there was a motive to have Kirk killed to distract from the Epstein files. I don't believe that. There is no evidence of that whatsoever. But where we are is that there are a lot of people in Trump's circle who would love to move on from the Epstein files, whatever the opportunity is to do that. And so where we are today is that the House Oversight Committee has dumped 33,000 pages of Justice Department files, and Epstein's estate documents are out, the birthday book, the sketches, the photos, all of that stuff. But we do not have the key documents, and we aren't forgetting about it. Every time a Republican goes, we released 33,000 pages, it sounds like progress. It sounds like we're moving in a direction that is going to be one of transparency and full disclosure. But if you just scratch beneath the surface a little bit, we find that we are nowhere near the transparency we were promised on the Epstein files. Senate Republicans killed a Democratic amendment, which would have forced the release of all the files, which is what we want. Many of the pages that have been released are heavily redacted. I saw one page that has like just the page number on it, or like one word. Everything else has been redacted. And we still have the really important materials, the client lists, the detailed flight logs, the correspondence with powerful people. It's sealed. And so when Trump talks about transparency, we get lawsuits, denials, and excuses. And the piece that almost never makes it into the headlines is that Trump has skin in the game here. He shows up in pictures with Epstein. His name is in the birthday book. He's on record saying he knows Epstein, likes them young, and all of this stuff. So my pledge to you is that I am not going to forget about this. Legacy and corporate media have gone along with bearing the story. They have benefited from the Venezuela situation, the Charlie Kirk assassination, not because they are planned distractions, but because they are convenient distractions. And by playing all of that up, we get away from where are the damn files. I'm not going to get distracted. Kirk's murder matters. We are now worried about an authoritarian crackdown. We're worried about retribution and so on. Venezuela matters. Was that even legal? J.D. Vance said, I don't give a shit if it's legal. It matters, and we're going to talk about it. But the files matter too, because we've got the survivors who we finally have started to hear from, but who have been mostly ignored since this entire thing started. The powerful being held accountable also matters. And the longer they delay, now we get a week and a half from the Kirk murder. Next week, we may get something else. They can cast doubt. They can argue that is a closed book because the files did come out. And until the full truth is out, we need to remember that the question doesn't go away. So I will ask again, where are the Epstein files? We're not forgetting about it. We've got a great bonus show for you today. We're going to talk about the use of the term fascist, because Trump has also used it against the left, even though it's assumed anytime you hear the word fascist, it's someone from the left using it about the right. Trump has used it about the left before. We're going to talk about an MSNBC reporter that was fired for a comment he made immediately after the Kirk shooting and whether that was justified. We are also going to talk about Governor Kathy Hochul endorsing Mamdani for mayor of New York City, and a whole bunch of other stuff. All of it on today's bonus show. Sign up at joinpakman.com. You'll get instant access. You'll get the bonus show. You'll get the commercial-free audio video streams, and all of it. Also, make sure you're subscribed to my Substack, substack.davidpakman.com. We've got some great Substack lives planned for this week, so we'll see you on the bonus show and back with a new show tomorrow.